think we're live.
Mhm.
Woo! Okay, so hello everybody, and welcome to today's live show. With me here is the lovely Charmaine. So I'll just go ahead and give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself and share anything that you wanted to share.
Yes. Hello, my name is Charmaine. I am bookstagrammer. My page is Traveling Through Books. I read a lot of fantasy, sci-fi, historical fiction, with a little bit of literary fiction and romance here and there. But the other three are the majority of what I read. And I'm really excited that I got to read this book with Alicia, A Hero Born. It's been sitting on my shelf for a little bit, and I've been really excited to read it. And I'm excited to talk about it.
Wonderful, thank you. So yes, we will be discussing A Hero Born by, and I'm just going to say right off the bat, I'm so sorry if either of us mispronounces any of the names. They don't have the accent, so I can't tell how they're pronounced, but by Jin Yong, translated by Anna Holmwood. And this is the start to an epic fantasy series. I also similarly had not this book, but the second book. So for some reason, I decided to get the next book in the series first. I think I've had it on my shelf for about a year and a half. And then I realized one day, this is the second book in a series. I should probably get the first. Yeah. So the live show will be structured by, first, we're both going to share our non-spoiler thoughts. And then if you are here, thank you so much for coming.
Yes,
Hi,
thank you.
Ben.
Hey, Potato. Hey, Cool Game.
Hey. Yes.
I did listen to the audiobook, so I may know some of the pronunciations, but
Okay, perfect. I'll be relying on you then.
Yes, Ben, please correct us.
Yes. I did ask him, and he did mention that he's like, oh, there's no accents, like the pinyin isn't fully written, so he also doesn't know how to pronounce a lot of the names. Hi, Cool Gamer. Thank you for joining.
Give it our best.
Yes.
Well,
So
Potato said she read it in Vietnamese, so she doesn't even know the Chinese name, she said.
Okay. That's
So
really cool.
Describe the characters.
How long ago did you read it, Potato? Let us know. I thought we could start, for anybody who might be watching this later, give a brief synopsis, and then we can go ahead and share our overall thoughts and ratings. Do you feel comfortable giving a synopsis?
Sure. So A Hero Born tells the story of two sworn brothers. They don't know who each other are, but their parents were sworn family, and then they made a promise that their children would either be sworn brothers or betrothed to one another, depending on how their children were born. Um, and then something tragic happens that causes them to be separated. And the mothers have to raise the children apart from one another, and then but they are destined to meet again in the future. And we kind of just follow their upbringing, and then they both kind of get trained in the kung fu martial arts. And I don't know what to say without spoiling.
No, I think that was a perfect synopsis, because I felt like I would have given too much away. But that was perfect. It gives just enough without giving away plot mechanics.
Yeah.
Okay. So, drum roll. what did you give this book?
I haven't decided on a rating yet. It's probably between 4 and 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I didn't have too much. I didn't really have any complaints. Really, I thought it was very an entertaining story, very plot driven. But I'm a plot driven reader, so that worked out great for me. um, so if you like elaborate prose and atmospheric settings, this may not be you. Um, if you're a night circus reader, this may not be for you. But if you like action, if you like fight scenes, if you like kind of like tales of heroes and legends, I think this is going to be a book that you enjoy. It is translated, obviously, lit in translation. So I'm sure we aren't getting the full nuance of the prose in its original language, but I still really enjoyed the story and I'm really eager to continue. So it'll probably be around maybe a 4.5 or a 5.
Okay. Oh, that's great to hear. We'll come back to the translation in a bit. I mean, I don't read or speak Chinese, so but there was Patrick also read this book, and he talked about how he didn't like the way that the names were translated. So that's interesting. But before we talked a little bit, we go deeper into the book. So I think I also haven't rated it yet, but for me, I think it's going to be closer to a 3.5 star rating. And the reason for that is one is I was in a major reading slump all throughout June, and it was just hard for me to really pick up any book and finish it. But I did finish A Hero Born, which says a lot because I didn't really finish many books. But like you said, it is very plot driven, and I tend to lean to character driven approach. Like I love characters and I love diving into them and seeing their motivations and seeing relationship dynamics, which we do get a lot here. But I do tend to struggle with plot driven books. The only plot driven book that I absolutely adore is Leviathan Wakes. And I think the reason for that, even though I hate one of the main characters, is that there's horror elements in it. So I think when there's horror elements in plot driven books, I tend to like them a little bit more for some reason. So it's closer to a 3.5 star for me. Still really loved the way that just the fighting, the kung fu. I loved the way that the plot progressed. The character started to grow on me near the end, so I will be continuing, and I'm excited to continue because there was a lot of reveals near the end. Um, and I do have to say that generally I don't read fighting scenes. So like in Mistborn, whenever there's like the fighting scenes, I literally just like skim them or skip them. I'm like, okay, they're going to fight. Let me skip this. But I actually read through the kung fu fighting scenes in here. So they were really well written, and that kept me engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it really felt like I was reading like the script of like a kung fu movie. So if you like kung fu movies or martial arts movies, I think this is a great book for you. The wuxia genre in general is probably going to be very good for you because it really did feel like this would make a great adaptation, which according to Potato, there are many adaptations of this series.
I need to go look some of them up because I 100% agree with that. That was, I think, another thing that I struggled a little bit with is I was reading this, and this comes back to something that Joanna has been talking about recently of whether when people read, if they can picture like if it's a movie in your head, and I don't get that. So as I was reading it, I really wish that I could be seeing it on screen. I felt like as a movie, I would just be mind blown. But because I can't really picture scenes in my head, a lot of it just my brain just kind of like glazes over them and skips it, which is why I think I don't like reading about fighting scenes because I can't see all of these dynamics play out. I'm just not a very creative person in my head, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different types of reading formats. I'm a pretty good visualizer, so maybe that's why I was like really into it. I did like the pictures in the book. That was nice.
Yeah, I like them too. Let me try to find one, that way we can show one without any context. I feel like they're not very spoilery. We can both show one.
Please.
Ta-da! So we talked a little bit about who this would be for. For me, one other book that I was telling Charmaine that it reminded me of before we joined the live is Upon a Burning Throne, the Burnt Saga Empire series. This read similar to that in that, again, there's a lot of plot. It's plot driven. There's a large cast of characters. And I also felt like there is a central plot line that drives a hero born. There's something that we're building towards, but it meanders a lot. So it's very adventure focused. Like we have this cast of characters that we're following, and then they encounter different people along the way, and they kind of go off on their little mini adventure, and then they come back to the main storyline. It felt like that several times throughout. So if you don't mind books that meander a little bit and you're really just, enjoying the ride, I think this would be a great, cozy, fun, adventurous read for you. And I mean, and if you're a plot-driven reader, then yes, pick it up, because I thought it was really great in that regard.
Mm-hmm. It was kind of in a way like episodic. Like each chapter could have been like its own episode.
Yes.
Like this week on A Hero Born.
Which is why it would make a great TV adaptation, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tater, you have to tell us which adaptation to watch.
Yes. I think it's called Aphantasia. Oh. Okay. I have Aphantasia then.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah. There's a lot of walking in Jin Yong. Yes. And so Potato, have you finished the entire series? Because I know you said you read it when you were 13 or 14. But other than that, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that is non-spoiler before we get into spoilers that you think would be beneficial for someone to know about if they wanted to read it?
I can think of. I was gonna say it's kind of random, but it does kind of like remind me of a more plot-driven Dandelion Dynasty, the way that is told, just with like the large plot of characters. I feel like Dandelion Dynasty is a good mixture of plot and character, which I think you'll probably draw more to it. And there's a lot more political intrigue, but there's still like that grand like hero epic type of feel to it. Yeah, so it kind of reminded me of that.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm trying to get to the Dandelion, or at least start it this year by the end of the year, but I'm trying. Before I get to that, I told myself that I would read or start Jade City, and then I have to get through the, oh man, I forgot the name of the series, but it starts with the City of Brass. So I also have to get through that series.
Now I forget. I read the first one. I haven't continued.
Oh, the Dabbledob trilogy. There we go. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and now I forgot. Trying to remember. Oh.
Nice. I knew he was inspired by Three Kingdoms and the Iliad. I didn't know this one too. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on in that series, but it's good.
That's what I was going to mention too is this book made me so much more interested in history, just Chinese history. Like I had to look up the Song and Jin Wars, and I had to look up how like Genghis Khan took over that entire region of the world at some point. It just made me, it reignited a passion for history that I didn't realize that I had since I was really young. But I think that can also be a challenge for some people in that it's okay to be uncomfortable with this book. You are reading from, at least if you live on the western side of the world, um, it's histories that we don't talk about in depth all the time and are not present all the time, and so there is a little bit of ambiguity there. The names also, I really like that they had a couple of pages at the beginning that let you know who the characters are. I often found myself flipping back to the front just to make sure that I was understanding who the right character was, because at first that was a little bit confusing to me because they're not names that I encounter often. So I will say that was a little bit of a challenge, but eventually you really get the hang of who is who and what factions are not factions, but you know who the Jin are versus who the Song are versus who, what are they called, like nomadic.
The
Was there a name?
I know there were like the Immortals and then like the Seven Brothers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did get confusing in the beginning, especially like during like the beginning fight scenes. I'm like, wait, why are you hurting your friend? I'm like, oh wait, that one's not your friend. I'm like, who's attacking who? I don't know.
Yes, that was very confusing, and we can talk a little bit more about this in the spoilers section, but near the end where one of the I guess the teachers of that one school of thought was teaching one particular character, I was like, wait a second, you're supposed to be enemies. But okay, I don't think I have any other non-spoiler thoughts.
No. Only like if you like floppy paperbacks, this is a good one.
Yes. Lick that flop. And I totally agree with this statement. Very specific period of China's history that isn't as popular. Mm-hmm. I will be watching a lot of history YouTube videos after this.
I really enjoy it. I like historical fiction, but I also really like the combination of historical and fantasy and historical and sci-fi. I really like that combination. So I really enjoyed it. And I read a book earlier. I didn't really care so much about the book, but it was set in like the with the Mongolian inspired culture. And I thought that was really intriguing. So when we get to the spoilers, like that section of the book was probably one of my favorites.
I agree. One thing that just came to mind is the fantasy elements, because this is a translated fantasy book. I would say for people that really care about whether it's a hard or soft magic system, there's no like hard fantasy elements in here. Really, a lot of the fantasy elements come into play with the fighting, I would say. But other than that, there isn't like, well, I guess you have like beasts, not like condors or birds that are very large. But it is the first book in the series, so I don't know if there'll be more fantastical or magical elements that are introduced. But for the most part, it's very adventure driven. There's a lot of dialogue between characters that happens, a lot of training, kung fu, and that's where you see a lot of the fantasy come out. But there is like no fantasy like hard system that we follow, or at least not now.
Yeah. And it's kind of like like in any like kung fu movie that you see, like the mysticism or the magic is kind of with like how they move when they're fighting. Like we know people normally can't scale cliffs like flightless birds, but you see that in like those movies, and it's tied in with like the training that they do as kung fu masters.
Yes. So if you don't have anything else for the non-spoiler section, I would love to go ahead and get into some spoilers. Yeah, okay. Wait, let me pop this up. See this for a quick breakdown of common fantasy genres?
You're gonna be typing away, potato?
Okay, so if you are here and you haven't read the book, if you're watching this back, we're going to talk spoilers now. Or, I mean, I do know someone who started it and DNF'd it. They couldn't get through it. If you don't plan on reading it and you still want to hear the spoiler thoughts, go ahead. But this is your warning. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're in full spoiler mode. Yeah. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, and we don't have to go in order or anything, but you said that the middle part where they're with the Mongols and with Genghis Khan before he becomes Genghis Khan, that was your favorite part of the book. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I don't know. I just, well, I really liked, let me see, let me get his name right. Gu Jing.
Mhm.
Yes, the son of Sky Fury and Lily Lee. He's probably one of my favorite characters. I felt bad like they kept saying like he's not that smart, but I'm like he's so sweet though. um, but yeah, I just really liked his character, so that's one of the reasons why it was my favorite part, because we got to focus a lot on him. But I also really liked how we see, oh my gosh, what's his name? The Khan that takes him in.
Oh, K. Starts with a K, I think.
Temujin. Khan,
Yeah.
Great Temujin. I really liked to see his progress into almost getting killed one day, to being sworn into a member of Khan Ong, I think, army, and then working his way up to like this Khan underneath the Great Khan. Um, of power, and like how well his men respected him, how he strategized with his military formations, and how he instilled loyalty amongst his people, and how he had like this grand vision long term of um, uniting the different tribes in the Mongol area, and how he knew like they didn't have to be subservient to the Jin. Like they have the ability to have independence, if not even conquer the Jin themselves. And I really liked those type of leader characters, and just to see like his determination, and like how he treated his children, compared to like the contrast to, what was his name, the Khan's son. What's his name? Singwin. um, just how like spoiled and entitled he was, and I think they contrasted well against each other.
I agree. I like that there were several characters that were meant to be lovable and others who are like the antagonist, I guess, who don't have those characters that you like. But I character traits that you like. But I agree. Guo Jin is definitely one of my favorite characters in the entire book, and this I don't remember when this book was originally written, but 1924. No, he was born in 1924. Oh, 1957. At least that's what this one says. So I guess it was translated into English in 1957, or was it written? No, okay, it was written in 1957, translated in 2018. Um, but it's he was already subverting the chosen one trope in a way, right? Because Guojin is supposed to fight his sworn brother, and the seven freaks of the South really want him to succeed and train. And he comes from, like, his father was really renowned, a great fighter, and he just doesn't seem to be able to gain the skills at such a at the pace that they were hoping. And like you said, they keep calling him slow. They're like, oh, he's not very smart. He doesn't really have the instincts to be a great warrior, but they just weren't focusing on the right training for him. So I think it's great that we are introduced to this character that is not good at things, and he's slowly learning through failing to be better and really gaining skills. And he's also very brave and humble and nice. And I feel like those are qualities that I don't always necessarily see in main characters in fantasy, at least not right off the bat. So it was just really, really great to see that in a book.
Yeah, and he's just so determined to do the right thing, and he's like the lessons his mom taught him early on. He's like so ingrained to that. Like he's so determined to do the right thing, even if it like puts himself in danger or puts. He's so like self-sacrificing just to do the right thing. And that's. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and that section actually, it had like a bit of a horror section while he was in the Mongol tribe with like the corpse couple.
Yeah. You're right.
The 5-finger skull. I'm like, this is kind of scary.
Yeah. I didn't see that part of the book coming, actually. I feel like there was a lot going on during that time, and then they added that section, and I was like, oh, okay. I also thought he was a great contrast to, and I'm looking up his name. It was one of the teachers. Was it? No, that's the Jin Empire. It was one of the teachers, the one who is teaching the other sworn brother, who is the prince, and we don't know about, Yong King.
Eternal Spring. Chuji.
Yes, because he's also very like righteous and cares about justice and also wants to do the right thing. But with him and his character, we see that he doesn't mind, or at least it seems like he doesn't mind. Like, I think he's too righteous. Like, he's too strict in his passion for justice. That I don't think he's a very flexible character. Whatever he thinks is right in his head, he's like, that's it. There's no going around that. So yeah. I feel like Guojin was a really good contrast to that, showing that he stands by his morals, but he ultimately still cares about well-being of other people.
Well, you see with like Guojin, like when he like sets off on his journey, like before he ever like steps out to do something, he always like watches and observes first, and he like tries to get like what's actually going on, who are these people, what's happening, what's the motivations. Where I feel like Eternal Spring, he just acts on a fence. And I feel like even when we first meet his character, like he's ready to fight Yang and Ironheart and Sky Fury because he thinks they're these bandits without even like getting like the full story first. Yep. Like I think he just like acts on impulse where and once he senses injustice without getting the full picture, he'll act on it. And like with like the priest who was hiding the justice and Lily Lee, like even though he was right, like Lily Lee was there, he didn't stop to think like maybe the head Taoist, he was being deceived too. He didn't know Lily Lee was there. So I think he could have just learned a lesson from, well, he could have been more like Gujing, and where he just kind of observed and got like the full story before acting.
It kind of felt like all the men in this book kind of were that way. Like the seven heroes of the South were also that way. They were very impulsive. Well, most of the men, I guess. They were all very impulsive and just kind of acted. They're like, oh, this is the way that I must be. Like when Guo Jin was being trained by, was it Scarlet Sun, Ma Yu? And they're like, oh, he must be plotting against us. We need to kill him. And like three of them voted to kill him. And it's like, you've been training him for like 10 years. What is going on here?
Yeah. And maybe he, like, Gujing kind of benefited from like being raised by the Mongol people, just because I feel like Temujin was also like very strategic and like very observant. And then like how they were saying during the condor fight, how like they would observe the birds and like get military strategy from their formations. Like I feel like they're a lot more observant people and like slow to act, but when they act with intention.
Yes, yes. And it was also nice to see them slowly build their army, or their, is there a word for their, I'm thinking like Game of Thrones. Yeah.
I think they call them tribes, I think.
Their tribes. Okay, yes. Their tribes, and how they're slowly increasing in strength, power. I wonder if the second book is going to cover more of that. I haven't read the synopsis for the next book, and this ended on a pretty big cliffhanger. So,
yeah, I am excited when we go back to Temujin and revisit the Mongol. But also, I feel like it's going to be a while based off the ending, because now we have to figure out what's going on with Charity and reuniting with her husband. Because I didn't see that coming. I thought both fathers were dead. So that was an interesting surprise. And to figure out the motivation which led to them being attacked that day was that the Jin prince was so in love with this woman that he's like, let's kill her family and kidnap her. I'm like, that's horrific.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I don't
and
like
even worse. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't like him for that, and for trying to like plot destroy the Mongol people. So he's a little weasel.
Yeah, I don't like him at all. I don't understand how he kept evading just capture, right from when he took Charity to when they had the fight where we were first introduced to the seven heroes, how they didn't catch him then, and then he went all of these years without any repercussions. And I don't know, he just keeps like weaseling his way out of things, like you said. I didn't see it coming either. I didn't think any of the dads were alive. I did. So as soon as like the book started to call the prince's mother the consort, and then we found out that the prince was being trained by Eternal Spring, or Q Chuyi, that thought sparked in my head. I was like, I think this is going to be Yang Kang. And I had that split thought, but I never would have I never thought that his father was still alive. So that was a pretty big reveal for me too. But I did see the other part coming. I was like, okay, I think the prince is going to be Yang Kang. And I thought the consort was his mom. That was
that I got too. I'm like, okay, so that's his brother, the jerk.
yeah.
And then but I didn't get the father part. But I'm interested to see how the brother unfolds, because we spent so much time with Gujing. I'm interested to see like what happened with Yang Kang, um, and how his upbringing came to be, and like what's he gonna do now with this new information? Is he going to side with his adoptive father and the power of that, or is he going to have a change of heart?
And are we going to have this epic battle?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you about that. So before I even started the book, I tried to read through the characters at least once. That way I can get a feel for who was going to be in the cast. And the very first page says main characters, and we have Guo Jin, Yang Kang, and then Lotus Huang. And we're like 10% into the book, and I'm like, the main characters haven't showed up. So then, right, Guo Jin is born, and we start to see him with the Mongols, and I'm like, okay. And then, like 60% into the book, I'm like, okay, the other main characters haven't showed up. It's fine. It's fine. And then about like 70% through, that's when we get introduced to Lotus Huang, and we don't really know that it's her right off the bat because they're not introduced as her. And then it's not till the end of the book that we get introduced to Yang Kong. So I found that fascinating because it doesn't follow like the standard Western style of fantasy. Like these are our three main characters, I'm guessing, for the entire series, but two of them get introduced so late in this
Mm-hmm.
first book. I just found that super interesting.
Yeah, I started reading like the first few characters at the beginning, and I'm like, no, I'm like, no, this is gonna be spoiler. So I stopped. And it kind of reminded me of like the character list in the Dandelion Dynasties. Like, don't read that until
Oh, okay.
after, because it will introduce you to these characters that you don't get to know right away. So it's like,
Okay.
you're like, it's really more like a reference. So it's like, but like you don't want to like read it like from beginning to end
That's
until you
good
read.
to know. I won't do that. Potato said the TV series cuts that first chunk down into like 15 minutes. Okay. That's good to know
So,
too.
should we finish the series before watching the
Let us
adaptation?
know. You know, I feel like I have to finish the series before watching the TV adaptation because if I jump into the adaptation, I'm not going to want to come back to the books because
Yeah,
I can't visualize them.
same.
But Potato says yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And she said to read Wolf of the Plains. It's about Temujin.
Yes.
Nice.
Let's see. Wolf.
Is
I'm going to
that a
look that up.
historical fiction?
Okay. It's a novel by Con B. Goulden. Is it a fiction book? Yeah, I think it is. Oh, it's a historical novel. And the first book in the Conqueror series based on the Mongols. That is awesome. I am going to add this to my TBR because I just want to learn more about that part of the world through fiction. I just find it super interesting.
Yeah, I've heard of the series. I just didn't recognize the name of the book, the Conqueror series. Someone else recommended that to me.
Now we know you'll really like it too.
Yes. Have you seen the Netflix series on Genghis Khan? I forget the name of it. It
Mm-mm.
was like Netflix's answer to Game of Thrones. And I think it was only like 2 or 3 seasons, but it was really good.
If you remember the name, let me know because I would love to watch that.
Yes. But like Game of Thrones, there is a lot of nudity. For those watching, just a forewarning.
Now we talked about our favorite character, but do you have a favorite scene?
Favorite scene?
Potato said it was very good.
Oh, it's called Marco Polo.
Marco Polo. Oh, thank you. Writing that down.
Let's see. I guess it would be like the two battles in the Mongol section. The one where they were fighting, I think, was it the Naaman tribe? I liked seeing that strategy play out, even though they were outnumbered. And then also the scene where they fight Singwin and Jamuka after they get ambushed by them. And I liked how his son, even though he couldn't get like the main generals to follow him, he got like all his young warriors to follow him and like tie branches to the horses to make it look like they had more people.
Those were some really great scenes. One of my favorite ones was actually when we first meet, and I forgot if they gave her a name when we first meet her, but it was Lotus Wang, when she comes up as like a street kid, and he basically invites herself to dine with Guojin, and he's like, oh, these are all the dishes that I want, and she just starts naming all of these dishes that I've never heard of, some of them, and then the food goes cold, and she's like, oh, bring us more, and this wine is only aged 5 years, it's not 10. Although that was a little wasteful, but I just thought it was super funny that this kid was just like, oh yeah, let me sit with you and let me order. You're gonna pay for it anyway. And then, by the way, can I have your horse?
Yeah. I knew something was up. At first, I thought she was one of like those other women that were trying to steal his horse. But I knew I'm like something's weird here. And then I was so mad at Gujing in that chapter. I'm like, you idiot.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hate to call you idiot because everyone's been calling you an idiot this whole book, but not helping your case.
Yep. Like, you don't know who this person is. Yeah.
You're giving them this magical horse that you fought so hard to train.
Yep. But, he leads with good intentions. He's like, this person needs a horse, and that's fine with me. And I'm like, you know what? It's stupid, but endearing. It's an endearing character trait.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm also very curious about the snake. When we learn the back history on the snake and like how like I guess drinking its blood makes you immortal. It's like, well, Gujing just bit the crap out of it. I'm like, is he immortal now? I don't know.
So I was a little bit confused during that scene. By biting it, did he actually drink its blood?
Well, he mentioned like how the blood tasted bitter. So
okay.
I'm assuming he may not have drank a lot of it, but I'm sure he got some of it.
So is it like a one? That's what I was wondering. Is it like a one drop kind of thing? And then, I mean, we might find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I wonder where that's going to go. Because why would the author mention that the blood tastes bitter and then tell us that about drinking the blood?
That's true. That's a good point. I'm guessing he might. Yeah.
Protect.
Yes. Yes. That's true. That's true. Was there anything else about the book that you found particularly like interesting, or any other parts of the book that you really wanted to touch on?
I don't think so. I'm curious about how some of the other characters are going to reappear, especially May, the little the witch. Like they let
Yes.
him go, but I feel like that's not going to be the end.
Yeah, she's definitely going to come back. There is no way. That was like a loose plot point that was left there.
Yeah. And I feel like we're going to have some weird love triangles, maybe squares. Because you have Lotus, and then you have Kojin back in the Mongol tribe. And then we have, what's her name? Mary? The girl that's Ironheart adopted.
Oh yeah. Muji, right?
Lucy. Or
Yeah.
Mercy?
You're sorry. You're right. Mercy, you.
Something with an M. Yeah. So I feel like there's gonna be some weird love interests.
I completely forgot about Kojin once we got to the end of the book. I completely forgot that Guojin is technically engaged to her.
Yeah.
So that's going
Like,
to be interesting. As he sees her as his little sister.
yeah. But he has so much respect for Timmy Jin, and he's like sworn brothers to what's his name again? Tuli, her brother. So I'm like,
Mhm.
he can't not marry her. I feel like Gujing is so honorable, like he wouldn't not marry her.
I know. And I don't like where that's going. I don't really like Kojin as a character, especially when like this is a new area for him. He's technically still, well, actually, I don't know how old he is, but he's definitely not over 18. And he grew up with her, seeing her as his little sister, and we know that she has some feelings for him. And so there's a little bit of an awkward scenario because they're engaged now and he's leaving, and that's pointed out. And then she gets so mad that she like whips her horse really hard and makes him bleed, and I'm just like, ooh, I feel like she might be an antagonist later on.
Mm-hmm. We'll see.
I know, she completely left my mind.
I'm also curious about the animals, like the horse and the two condors. I don't like. I feel like they're important, but we've only gotten like a little lead, like a little backstory, but we haven't fully dived into their importance.
I mean, the series is called The Legends of the Condor Hero, so I feel like the condors are going to play a really big part. But I did read a little bit of the appendix, and there was a note made that the condor controversy, because apparently in its original language there is no like real translation for that. It just means more of like a bird of prey rather than an actual condor or an eagle or anything specific. So I found that also really interesting.
Yeah. So we just know it's a large bird.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found, I mean, I didn't dislike it. I just found very easy, where there was some plot conveniences that just felt really easy. Like at the end where um man, I keep forgetting their name. So it was Guo Jin and it was Lotus Huang. They go into the prince's area to go ahead and get the herbs to save their friend, and they overhear that someone's been locked up and captured. And instead of rushing, like their friend could be killed or be paralyzed, and they really need these herbs. Instead of acting with urgency, Huang is like, "Oh, but let's just find out who this person that's locked up is. Let's just take a quick detour." So little things like that, and that's why we find out that that's Charity Bao, and that's how the whole thing unravels. But I just found it very convenient for that to happen, and maybe that's part of her character trait. Like she's just very
Yeah.
curious in nature. Um, but yeah, like little things like that I just found super convenient. And I didn't love the way they were brought up, but it ultimately ended up being a very satisfying book.
Yeah, I kind of read it as her personality trait because I was like, I don't really like this Luna. Because I'm like, I don't really like it when characters do things that are like
Yeah.
inefficient. I'm like, we don't have time for this.
Yep.
Like, I would be the character that would have just left her. I'm like, bye, I'm leaving.
Like, you go find out, I'll go get the herbs.
Yeah. Hope you survive.
I mean, she kind of is a little bit OP. Like, she is very skilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested
Potato
to
said
find
she
out
has.
her.
Uh-huh.
I forget the word, but her trainer is.
Her is a Shifu, I think.
Yeah, Shifu.
Me too. I was trying to figure out who that was. But I have no idea. Yeah. Potato said she has a very questionable moral compass. Yeah. The curiosity gets the best of her. Yeah, but other than that, I thought it was a really good start to a series. I'm really excited to see where it's going. I really want to find out if Guojin and Yang Kang are going to duel it out and if it's going to be to the death or not. And then just see what happens from there, because there were a lot of things that were just kind of left up in the air. And I want to see where it's all going.
Yes, me too. I think this is gonna be like a fun, lighthearted series to enjoy. It kind of reminds me of Theft of Swords by Michael Sullivan, where
Yeah.
it's just like a very easy, fun read. It's not like overly dense or like um, tedious to read. It's just very fun and adventurous and a good time.
I agree. I'm trying to avoid spoiling things for y'all by answering questions. I don't remember what happens when in the series. So this book ends with us finding out that the prince is actually Yang Kang, and that Charity Bao is the consort to, or the mother of the prince. And then we find out that was it Sky Fury? No, it was the
There's iron something.
Ironheart Yang is still alive. Um, and that's basically where it ends. Like, I think Woljin's like, oh no, this is your father, you must respect him, or something like that. And that's literally where it ends with that reveal.
Typical Googing.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we end?
No, I probably will. Now I'm like kind of at a crossroads where like part of me wants to continue to book two, but I'm also in the middle of the Veiled Throne, book three in the Dandelion series, and then I'm also like a third of the way through the Fall of Babel, the last book, books of Babel. So I'm like, I don't know what to read next.
Just pick where your heart takes you.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm still like, I'll like leave a book like halfway through if like my mood shifts. So I'm like, we'll see what happens.
I'm the same way. Potato said nothing's happened yet. Stay tuned.
Oh no.
That's only 4 books. You'll be fine.
Yeah, and they're not like thick books, which is nice because it's just like 400 pages. So.
Yeah, I don't know what I'll be reading next. I decided for July, I'm not even going to make a TBR because I haven't finished a book. This is the first book that I finished in a couple of weeks. So I think I'll just see where my heart takes me and then start a new book. And I'll go from there.
Yay. Mood readers.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Well, okay, I guess this is where we will go ahead and end our live. Charmaine, thank you so much for reading this with me for the book club and also, coming on live here and discussing it with me. It was a great book to discuss, and I'm really glad that you loved it so much. Yeah, if you end up reading it anytime soon, let me know and I can pick up the second book, and if possible, maybe we can do another live show. That's not
Right?
related to the book club. Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds good. Okay,
Sounds
well,
good. Thank you for
we'll end
having
here. Oh,
me.
okay. I'll end the broadcast now. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Potato, for staying till the end. And we will keep you updated as we read, because it looks like this was a setup for the rest of the series. So that's exciting, and I can't wait to continue.